Have you ever noticed how the people who hold everything together are usually the ones that no one asks about? They're the ones answering the text messages, remembering the appointments, showing up to every meeting, checking on everybody else, right? Making sure dinner gets on the table, making sure the project gets submitted, making sure everyone around them feels supported. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, they quietly stop asking themselves one simple question: how am I doing? Not because they don't care, but because they are truly avoiding the answer. But because there just hasn't been time, there hasn't been space, there hasn't been permission. This past month, I had one of those mornings. Actually, I think it was one of those mornings that perfectly captures what this entire season is about. It was early, not the peaceful kind of early though, the kind where your brain is already awake before your feet ever hit the floor. I remember grabbing my phone before I even made it to the kitchen, and I tend to like to get up early. It's just peaceful and calming for me, typically, right? There were emails already waiting for me. There were messages, a couple of things that needed my attention for my business because this is a big deal for me. Something related to a school leader that I have been communicating with. A reminder about one of my sons. Laundry. Oh, laundry. Laundry that definitely still needed to be folded. And breakfast to make because, of course, everybody was looking at me like, what are we eating? A calendar that still looked completely full before 7 o'clock in the morning. And before I'd even poured my coffee or pressed that button on my Keurig, you know what I'm saying, I had already become who everybody else needed me to be. Founder, mom, educator, problem solver, support system. But I hadn't even spent 60 seconds being Ashley. I hadn't even checked in with myself yet. I hadn't even asked myself what I needed. I hadn't even noticed how I felt. I just started. And I remember standing there in my kitchen thinking, how did I get here before I even got dressed? I still had on my pajamas. I was still looking crazy, okay? How did I even get here? Maybe you've had mornings like that too. Maybe yours doesn't look exactly like mine. Maybe you're getting kids ready for daycare in the morning. Maybe you're packing lunches before heading into a school building. Maybe you're answering Slack messages before anyone else in your house wakes up. Maybe you're caring for your aging parents. Maybe you're building a business after everyone else goes to bed. Maybe you're doing all of those things at the same time. This looks like carrying so much responsibility that you become incredibly skilled at anticipating everyone else's needs while becoming so unfamiliar with your own. I want you to really hear that because I don't think this conversation is about being busy. Not at all. I think it's about becoming so used to, so accustomed to carrying that you forgot what it feels like to put something down. Welcome to Healing, Hustle, and Home. I'm Ashley Springs. I'm an educator, mentor, full-time founder, sports mom, and most importantly, y'all, I'm a woman who's spent a lot of years trying to lead well in more than one room and at the same time. And if this is your first time here, I'm so glad that you found us. Around here, we believe something that's become the heartbeat of everything that I do. Healing, y'all, it isn't separate from leadership. Hustle isn't about exhaustion, and home isn't just the place that you sleep at night. It's every single room that you've been entrusted to care for. Because the woman who walks into the room, she is the same woman who is leading it. Whether that's the room in your kitchen, whether that's your classroom, your office, your business, or simply the quiet space where you're trying to figure out who you are becoming. So before we go any further, can I ask y'all a favor? One small favor. If these conversations encourage you, if they help you feel a little less alone, would you please follow the podcast? Maybe even share this episode with someone who has quietly become the strong one for everyone around her, y'all. Because nobody should have to figure this out alone. And honestly, that's what this podcast is all about. That's why it exists. One of the biggest changes in my own life happened just recently, just within the last few days, actually. After more than 18 years in education, my chapter with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction came to an end. And it wasn't because I planned it that way, y'all. Not because I woke up one day and I decided that it was time. Life truly has a way of making decisions that force us into new seasons. And suddenly, July 1st arrived. So instead of walking into my office, I worked from home anyway. I walked into the room where I had built my business. The same woman, same room, different purpose, okay? I wish I could tell you I woke up feeling fearless, but that would be a lie, and I'm all about being real, okay? I wish I could tell you that I had everything figured out, that I had some dramatic movie moment where I smiled at the sunrise and confidently stepped into entrepreneurship. But that wasn't it. What I actually felt was the weight of possibility, the weight of responsibility, the weight of wondering if I could really build something meaningful while still showing up for the people who matter most to me. Because here's something I don't think we talk about enough. Sometimes the dream you've prayed for, it still feels heavy when it finally arrives. Not because it's wrong, not at all, but because dreams have responsibilities attached to them. They have expectations attached to them. Building something that's truly meaningful still requires leadership. It still requires decisions. Decisions require energy, y'all. And energy is a finite source. It's a finite resource, especially when you're also someone's mom. And I'm someone's mom times 3. Especially when you are someone's mentor, someone's friend, someone's daughter, someone's person everyone calls when they need help. This looks like finally getting the opportunity that you've worked toward and realizing that your calendar suddenly didn't become empty. Your laundry, it still needs to be washed. Your groceries still need buy-in. The football schedule still exists. People still need you. The responsibilities don't disappear. The room itself just changes. And I think that's where so many women quietly begin to disappear. Not physically, though, y'all. I'm talking about emotionally, internally, because we've gotten so good at adapting to every room we enter that we stop asking who we are becoming inside of all of this adapting. I didn't want this season to begin with productivity tips or morning routines or planners. We'll get to the practical frameworks. I have a lot of them. We'll talk about systems, trust me. We'll talk about leadership. We'll talk about building businesses and building homes. But before we do any of that, I think we have to tell the truth. Because if we skip the truth, y'all, every single tool becomes another thing to manage. And the truth is this: sometimes the greatest cost of being the person everyone leans on is that you slowly stop leaning on yourself. Wow. I want to stay here for a minute because that's powerful. Because I think this is the part that we usually rush right on past, right? We notice that we're tired, and then we immediately start looking for ways to be less tired. We notice that we're overwhelmed and we start searching for a better planner, a better routine, a better morning, a better app. As if the problem is that we just haven't found the right system yet. But what if the first thing you need isn't another system? What if it's permission? Permission to acknowledge what's actually happening. Because I think there are a lot of women listening today, right now, in this very moment, who have become so efficient at carrying the weight that nobody realizes how heavy it has become. Maybe not even you. I remember a season, not one dramatic day either, y'all. I'm talking about a season where I was holding so many different roles that I honestly stopped noticing when I crossed over from healthy responsibility into constant responsibility. Have you ever been there? Yeah. Where every time you finish one thing, another thing is already waiting. You answer one email, 3 more come in. Yeah. You check one thing off your list, 5 more get added. I call it my running to-do list at this point. You solve one problem, someone else needs you before you've even celebrated that win. And because you're capable, people naturally keep bringing things to you. Not because they're trying to overwhelm you, though, but because you've shown them that you can handle it, girl. And so here's what that looked like in my life. I was supporting schools, like a lot of schools, okay? Building resources, thinking about my business, helping my boys navigate their own schedules and their dreams, trying to be present, trying to be responsible, trying to be grateful, trying to be everything. And somewhere in the middle of all of those good things, actually all of those great things, I noticed something. I wasn't impatient with people. Nope, not most of the time anyway. I ain't gonna lie. I was probably impatient a few times. But most of the times I was impatient with myself. If I sat down, I felt guilty. If I rested, I started mentally listing everything I should be doing instead. If I wasn't producing something, I questioned whether I was using my time well because I had so much to do. I wonder if you've ever felt that. Not because someone told you to, right? But because somewhere along the way, your value quietly became connected to your usefulness. I want you to really hear this. Being dependable, y'all, it is beautiful. Being responsible, it is honorable. Being someone people can trust, that is a gift. This episode isn't about becoming less dependable. It's about making sure your dependability doesn't slowly cost you yourself. Those are two very different conversations. Very different, y'all. This looks like saying yes to helping one more person while quietly postponing the doctor's appointment that you've been meeting to schedule. Wow. It looks like remembering everyone else's deadlines, but forgetting what you've been praying about. It looks like making sure your team has what they need while convincing yourself that you'll be fine. I do that. It looks like sitting in the parking lot before walking into your house just to enjoy 5 uninterrupted minutes. Not because you're avoiding your family, because you're trying to remember what silence sounds like. If you've ever done that, You're not strange. You're not failing. You're probably just carrying more than most people realize, more than you even realize. So, you know what I've learned? The cost of being the one everyone leans on isn't always dramatic, y'all. Sometimes it is incredibly subtle. It's laughing a little less, sleeping a little lighter. Yes, sleeping a lot lighter. Being emotionally available a little less often. Losing your patience over little things that normally wouldn't even bother you, feeling disconnected from the person that you used to be, actually forgetting the things that you even used to love to do, feeling disconnected from the person that you used to be, not because she disappeared, but because she's busy taking care of everyone else. And here's the part that really changed the way I think. Most of us don't lose ourselves all at once, y'all. No, we don't. We lose ourselves in small decisions over time, little by little. I'll do that later. I'll get back to that next week. I don't have time for that right now. They need me more. This can wait until one day you realize that you have become incredibly familiar with everyone else's life and surprisingly unfamiliar with your own. Can I tell you something that has been changing me recently? I stopped asking myself, how do I get everything done? Nope, I don't ask myself that anymore. I don't even try to get everything done. I started asking myself, what part of my life has been waiting the longest for my attention? Those are the very questions that are different. Yes, one keeps me chasing, the other invites me to notice. And healing almost always begins with noticing, not fixing, not perfecting, not performing, just noticing. Because you can't care for what you refuse to see. That's actually one of the reasons why I created what I now call the right lane method. We're going to spend much more time with it later in this season. This is so important. So today isn't the day that I'm going to teach you about the whole thing. I just simply want to introduce the idea. Y'all, your life is not one giant problem. Not at all. It's made up of different lanes, different parts of who you are, different responsibilities, different relationships, different priorities. Sometimes the reason everything feels heavy isn't because everything is falling apart. It's because one lane has been quietly asking for your attention, while another lane has been consuming all of your energy. And that could look like you doing great. I mean, thriving professionally, y'all, while running on empty. Or feeling deeply connected at home while worrying about your finances every night. Or making progress in your business while neglecting your physical health. Or what about showing up as an incredible leader while forgetting you're also a woman who deserves care? I want you to hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying every lane has to be perfect. I'm never going to say that. It won't be. Life doesn't work that way. Some seasons require more from one room than another. Sometimes your family needs more. Sometimes your career needs more. Sometimes your healing needs more. Balance isn't the goal. Awareness is, right? Because awareness allows you to lead with intention instead of reacting to whatever is screaming the loudest. I think that's what this entire season is really about. Not becoming a different woman, but becoming more aware of the woman who's already in there, the one underneath all the responsibilities, the one underneath all the expectations, the one underneath all the titles. Because before you were someone's boss or a teacher or consultant or mom or founder, you were you, and she still matters. Not everyone else is okay. I'm talking about now, because the woman who walks into every room is carrying herself in that room too. And if she's exhausted, every room feels it. If she's constantly running on empty, every room eventually pays the price. Not because she isn't capable, but because she's human. So let me ask you something. When was the last time that you noticed yourself without immediately trying to improve yourself? Not judge yourself, not criticize yourself, not make another plan. I'm talking about just notice yourself. I'm more tired than I realized. I'm carrying more than I ever admitted. I've been showing up for everybody else. I think one part of my life has been waiting on me. Yeah, like that. That's where healing begins. Not with fixing, with seeing. And sometimes, y'all, seeing clearly is the bravest thing you'll do all week. So can I leave you with one more picture before we wrap up today? I want you to imagine driving down the highway. I'm talking like a busy 4-lane highway, right? In the city. Imagine you're driving down the highway. You don't wait until your car is completely off the road to make a correction. You notice. You make a small adjustment. You keep moving. That's how healthy leadership works too. Whether you're leading a family, a classroom, a business, a school, or simply trying to lead yourself well. The strongest leaders I know aren't the ones who never drift, y'all. They're the ones who notice sooner. They don't ignore the warning lights. They don't convince themselves they'll deal with it later. They pay attention and they make the right next adjustment. I think that's what so many of us have been missing though. We've been waiting until we're completely overwhelmed before we finally admit that something has to change. We don't have to hit rock bottom. We don't have to pass out before we change something. We don't. We wait until the tears come, until we're snapping at the people we love, until we're lying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning thinking about everything we forgot, until we're wondering if we should walk away from something that we once loved, until we are exhausted enough that everyone else notices, instead of paying attention when we first notice. And I wonder what would happen if we stopped waiting for the breakdown. What if we became women who noticed the whisper instead of waiting for the crash, y'all? I want you to really hear this. Healing doesn't always begin with a breakthrough. Sometimes it begins with a whisper, a quiet realization, a gentle pause, a moment in the kitchen when you finally admit, I have been carrying a lot. A drive home. These are my favorite. A drive home when you realize, I do not know the last time I checked in with myself. A conversation like this one, where maybe for the first time in a long time, you feel seen. Not because someone has all the answers, but because someone finally named what you've been carrying. And if that's what today has been for you, I am grateful. Because sometimes the greatest gift we can give each other is language. Language for what we've been feeling but couldn't explain, language that reminds us that we're not alone, language that helps us stop blaming ourselves for something that's actually asking for our attention. You know, when I sat down to dream about this podcast, I kept coming back to one thought. Women don't need another voice telling them to do more. We have enough on our plates. They need someone willing to sit beside them long enough to help them see clearly. And that's why this season isn't about adding more to your plate. It's about helping you understand what's already on it. Because once you can see it, you can lead. And that's true whether the room you're responsible for today is your kitchen, your classroom, your office, your team, or the quiet work of rebuilding yourself from the inside. I'm talking deep down. One woman, 2 rooms, 1 life. The woman doesn't change depending on which room she walks into. She carries herself into every single one. That's why healing matters. Because leadership begins long before anyone else sees it. It begins in the quiet. It begins in the ordinary. It begins in the moments when no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when no one knows the decision you're making except for you. Whew. When you're becoming in those moments, who you're becoming in those moments is the woman every room eventually meets. So before we end today, I don't want to give you homework. I want to give you a question. And I don't want you to answer it quickly either. I want you to carry it with you all week long, maybe even next week too. You ready? Here it is. What part of your life has been quietly waiting for your attention? Not someone else's attention, for your attention. Don't answer what feels urgent. Answer what feels honest. Maybe it's your emotional health. Maybe it's your rest. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's your relationships or boundaries. Maybe it's your sense of purpose. Maybe it's simply remembering that you matter too. Just notice. No fixing, no guilt, no pressure. Just notice. Because awareness is where healing begins. And healing is how we become the woman. If today's conversation resonated with you in any way, I have something I would love for you to do next. I want you, every one of you, to take the right lane check-in. It's just a simple assessment that is designed to help you identify which area of your life is asking for your attention first. Not all 5, just the one that's speaking the loudest right now. Because you don't need another generic plan. You need clarity. You'll find the link in today's show notes. So make sure you go and grab it there. Take the assessments. It's just going to take you a quick minute, okay? And if someone came to mind while you were listening, the friend who's always holding it together, the sister who never asks for help, the coworker who seems strong all the time, the mom who is carrying more than anyone realizes, would you please share this episode with her? Please do that. You never know when one honest conversation becomes the permission someone else has been waiting for. And if you haven't already, I would love for you to follow the podcast. We are just getting started because next week, y'all, we are talking about something that sits right beside today's conversation. We're talking about why so many of us feel guilty the moment we finally stop long enough to rest. And you know, we have all been there. We're talking about why rest feels like something we have to earn instead of something that we need to sustain the life that we're building. So if you've ever felt guilty for taking a break, I think next week's conversation is going to meet you exactly where you are. So thank you for letting me spend this time with you. Thank you for trusting me enough to sit with these conversations. And remember, you don't have to choose between the room you live in and the room you lead. You don't have to become someone else to lead them well. You just have to become more fully the woman you were always meant to be. Until next time, keep healing, keep building with purpose, keep leading every room you've been entrusted with. Because the world doesn't need a more exhausted version of you. It needs the whole woman. And I'll see you here next week.